Hey guys, this one's going to be just a quick video again. I know Paul's been doing the daily 10:30 streams. We've come up with a little bit of a strategy between us that Paul's doing some of the requests. I'm looking at some of the other areas for my trades currently, the Australian dollar, for example. We've been assessing the DXY as another option, looking for where potentially some of these things can go. So I've stepped back a little bit from the stream in the last couple of weeks, but I wanted to cover this specifically for what I'm doing with the YouTube, as well as not being obviously on Trading Food for a while. So I've been kind of creating a couple more posts, uh, kind of content wise, things like this, a couple of cartoons, a bit of fun. But actually, if you dig a bit deeper into these, you'll see there's a couple of lessons kind of hidden away in this as well. I've done some educational posts specifically for how these things are kind of wrapped together. And if you clearly follow us on Discord, there's a lot of this that you'll already know. So, jumping into Bitcoin, what I want to do is keep this video, like I said, short and sweet. And the general idea was just to give a little bit of a thought in terms of where we are big picture. So just zooming out so you can see exactly what I'm looking at. We've clearly got the all-time high. This was the first move down, and I think this was the assumption for some people being what could be regarded as an A, a B, and ultimately a C. So we've now clearly made a new low here. So if we were to make this assumption, then we could argue coming from this particular point that we've now seen a 0 to 1 move, a ugly looking 2, a move up 3, 3 to 4, and this potentially giving us some kind of 5. Okay, so this is only potential, and the reason that I've named this stream the way that I've named it is that I'm just looking at the various options because there's a couple of question marks in this still. I'm not really feeling overly bullish in terms of where we are right now, and I just wanted to give some understanding, some logic as to why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. So we've clearly got the pullback from the low here, and I'm going to come down and just put it on the low there. So for me, there's a nice little range forming in here. And one of the things that we've showed in the Discord channel again is this little technique. And I'll just leave this quite broad in terms of this particular stream. I'll just change the color on there, something a bit more obvious. And the reality is, seeing what we're seeing, if this was some kind of range, bigger picture, I've covered the Weiss waves, which I'll cover again in a second, and the logic by why I'm thinking um, the time period is not marrying up as we see just yet. So I still feel that there's a little bit more downward momentum to come, and if you zoom out and you actually look at this as an overall move, this will make a bit of sense when you understand what it is you're actually looking at. So first things first, this is the obvious play. This is something that I'm quite confident in terms of the pullback overall, and therefore I'd like to go a little bit deeper in terms of some of the key components we've talked about with the Weiss to start with, and then what I'll do is I'll step out of this and into the advanced get software that we're using as well. So let me just cover the Weiss wave really quick. I'm going to keep this, like I said, very short, so bear with me. Um, Ultimately, the one thing that I'm really keen on this, and to explain where we are and why I think we are where we are, is if we look at this move being the number one, we clearly had a number two sitting here. So just to give you the box in terms of a corrective move, this is clearly impulsive. We also had this move being the three. And on this three move, if you justify this with the BlockFi wallets, you'll actually see why I was calling the top there being the buyer's climax. We've slipped clearly into a four, and I don't think four is actually complete because the volume for 4 to 5 should actually give us a little bit more like this move here. So at the moment, it's still very early. Now, I'll step into the daily time frame on this. So let's say option one, we assume that this one, I can't remember if it was this one or this one being a low. So what was the low? 28.8 and 29. So in theory, what we could have had, if we were to assume this being the low, we potentially could have seen a nice move up one, pull back two very deep, and this is giving us the three. a 3, back down for 4, and a 5. Okay, so even if this was the case, the assumption we're going to come back down for a 38% test and we're going to get a new low giving us a 4 on the smaller time frame. So that's clearly option one. It's supported by potential for the Weiss wave move, but it's not really what I'm looking at overall. And what I'll do is I'll show you this now on the advanced get software as to why I'm seeing what I'm seeing there. Just before I do that, what I'll do is I will stick in the stochastic and I will show you this again as to why I'm seeing this potentially as a move. So even if we were to assume that we've actually got a one move playing itself out right now, like I said, we're going to get a 2 regardless. And if we don't get a 2 and we come back underneath this 50% marker, then I think we've got slope in volume sitting here. Nothing really exciting, nothing really massive in those particular moves. Nothing's giving me confidence that we are looking to take this to the moon, creating new all-time highs. And therefore, even in the second scenario, I'm seeing bearish sentiment starting to creep in. You then have the smaller time frame, the daily. And again, on the daily, although we've got a false bar, we can clearly see in this particular move up that we're actually getting right now what is referred to as the shortening of the thrust. And the shortening of the thrust basically means we're going up and now we're actually going sideways. So I think for me, the fact that we're already in the overbought territory, we got some sloping volume to the upside, but ultimately down on the stochastic is giving us some nice bearish divergence. We've got a move outside of this little magic box, which, like I said, in our Discord, you'll know exactly what we talk about in this particular box. And therefore, I think although we've got a nice little move, it was probably the most impulsive move we've seen for a while. And I know there's lots of questions around this being, the new move and the new move on up. But I just wanted to break down some of the logic as to why I'm not that confident yet in this particular move being the move. Okay, so let's stick on the weekly. Let's drop down to the daily. Obviously, from the daily, one of the areas of interest for me was if I'm looking at this with only Elliott eyes, the one problem I have with this as a particular move is we would be assuming this being our 0, and this move looks more like a 3-wave move rather than a 5-wave move. Okay, so if we were to assume this was our 1, I'm not seeing a 5-wave Elliott count 0 to 1. Now, if we were to assume that this was the 2, and 1 to 2 doesn't often happen in a 5-wave move, we can clearly see a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 sitting in there, which is not respecting any of the Fibonacci levels. And therefore, we've got a counter trend move to the upside, which should actually be impulsive 5. We've got a 5 move down, which is more likely to be corrective, which means for me, the idea of this still being in a corrective move is still pretty much solid as this foundation. And then we have this particular move from here. So if we assume this being the 0 instead of the 2, and now we're looking at the smaller time frame, so step down the time frame from this daily, we'd be looking at a 1, a 2, up to a 3. And the problem for me is the 3 is looking sideways, and we've actually got no pullbacks in this, which means, again, just like this one, there's no Elliott signals sitting in this particular move. So for me, this is actually more of the shakeout, and where we are right now is possibly even more interesting again, because if we're looking at this particular logic and we step down into this sideways action, sideways moves, what we would have seen in the last couple of days, so go back to the 9th, we would have seen a new high, the very next candle taking out this high, which means on a smaller time frame, we would have likely suckered in some longs at this position, taken it short, and ultimately taken it short. Now, at this point, a lot of people would have assumed potentially a deeper pullback. And the idea from Composite Man's perspective is to take this long again. We might even take a new high here, taking this pool of liquidity out, and therefore a rise to drop. is still on the cards for me any which way. So whether we've got the Weiss wave still in the 4, the weekly stochastic overbought, we've got a false bar on the daily, and I think we play in this sideways range right now, suckering both longs and shorts. So I think this for me is still showing characteristics of the overall 4 move rather than an impulsive 5 as you'd come to expect from a larger Elliott move. So there's some of the logic in terms of the chart itself. And what I'll do then is I'll step away from this and move into the advanced get software. And one of the obvious things for me, although I could probably paint this in terms of the trading view chart, it just makes it a little bit clearer to show in this. I feel that we're still in the weekly, but given this video was all around the options and the choices and playing out some scenarios, we also need to take into consideration that we could actually be in this monthly move. And if we're in the monthly move, knowing a corrective move is often 3 or um, in sequence of the Fibonacci, not so much the ratios, but the sequence. And we know that we've got a pattern like a zigzag or a flat. What you're actually going to find is unless we go into some kind of combo move, then you're likely to see just the 3-legged pullback, which means we'll be seeing a 0 down to a A, from an A back up to a B, and from a B down to a C. Now, there's nothing stopping the C being just a double bottom or maybe just a tad lower. Doesn't necessarily have to carry on down. But this for me is one thing that makes me question, although I'm still sounding a bit bearish, I'm just looking for logic to take this long, and I'm actually struggling with the long logic over the short logic right now. We've also got this oscillator starting to slope down, looking for the value area down here, and I am actually on a monthly time frame. So thinking of composite man, thinking of the time periods, it'd be no surprise at all if this was to drag out, going into, well, easily into next year. That wouldn't be a surprise at all. If I was to get rid of these, we just take these out, just delete the lines, and then dropping down into the weekly. Now, again, similar kind of move. If we were to assume an a B, and a C down here, the next bit of problem that I have is that this sideways action is looking more like a continuation pattern overall with a little bit of a fake out. And that's quite a hard one to justify. But the problem that we have here, and one of the members in the group have talked about this as a kind of a nonsense zone, we actually have from the low A, even if we were to assume a B up here, the problem that we have is that on the A to the B to the C, we're then coming back into this pattern being now the 0 from the original 4 move that the advanced get is looking at. And therefore, we'd be seeing a 0, a 1 back down to 2, a 2 moving on up to a 3. And if I was to come back to the trading view charts, I'll show you the extension levels in a second. And therefore, I still think we're going to get a pullback, even if we are to assume that this is correct and we are moving up to a 5 from this move, giving us 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, possibly up at the current all-time highs. There is logic for it to go up to 87, but I genuinely feel if we go up from this level here without a half decent pullback, I think we're going to top out at probably 65 and come crashing straight back down, confirming the monthly ABC move rather than the weekly impulsiveness here. So again, just logic as to why both options are kind of potentially still in play and still viable both ways. So to finish off with, if we were to assume, like I said, from the low, we've got this clear A, B, C move. We've got this real strange move down, which technically should give us an ABC. I don't like the way that Get have actually drawn this A to B to C. So we've technically got a 3-3 pattern. Now, if we are to see a 3-3-3, could we actually argue potentially another 3 move, something like this, or even up to this, back down to this one? followed up to the top. Um, so it's just an ugly move of part of the bigger picture. And I think if you're coming down to the daily from the monthly, it just makes a little bit more sense, I guess, in terms of why this could easily be an A to a B in this particular move right now. And therefore, if we were to assume this up here, we'd have to look at the Fibonacci extension levels. But let's assume we've come all the way up to a 3. Now, worst case scenario, like I said, we're going to get a 4 pullback anyway. The oscillator is kind of confirming this. So we've got logic on the monthly, logic on the weekly, and logic on the daily, all to pull this level back down. So just to finish off with, I'll jump straight back into TradingView, and just to finish off on these particular extension levels, if I was to map this out on the, where was it to? If I was to map this out on the pullback levels, I'd be looking for, where am I to? I can't even find my own tools. I can't even find, where's it gone? There we go, the fib retracement level. So first of all, if I find the extension rather than the retracement from the low up to what we would assume the one, from the one we are looking at the 1618, so that technically is a tick in a box. It could easily give us comfort that this was a 1 back down to 2 and a 3 move up. And if we were to assume that that's the case, then my target range would give me a 50 level, which means we could likely see a 50 up and a 50 drop, giving us a bigger corrective move. So if we were monthly, I'm just trying to think back of the advanced get software, if we were monthly and this is giving us a B, then my potential B target would look something like this. Whereas if we are impulsive, then I'm going to start to question this particular move going 0, 1, back down to 2. This is going to be my 3. This is my 4. And the B becomes the 5. Okay, so either which way, we're going to see some potential rejection if we do take out these highs here. But I think we are seeing some strong resistance at this level at the moment. And therefore, I would like to see a bit of a fake out up and a drop down, unless we keep the false bar and we get another couple of days, which, 2 or 3 days could easily take us maybe over the weekend up to 50 and down. So again, the logic is pretty much the same. I don't think we're going to go massively through the roof here. I think possibly 50 is a nice round target, psychological level. I think this is still fueled by mostly hype rather than institutional money right now. The volume isn't really supporting the move, but again, in Elliott terms, the volume doesn't always apply to the first move one. So although I'd like to say that given the character, there's not enough in here. I'm not seeing things like a 5 move in this one. I'm not seeing a correct 3 move or a multiple of 3 in terms of the Fibonacci sequence. I'm clearly not seeing a 5 move in this particular move, and we're not seeing a 3 move in there. So there's nothing there telling me that this is a correct count, and therefore, sentiment is pretty much still the same. So obviously that's enough for today. I've ranted on a little bit too long. I hope this makes a little bit of sense. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll be doing another couple of streams shortly. Have a good weekend, guys.